Most financial advice tells you what to do. This podcast explores how to do it when life, stress, fear, shame, and overwhelm get in the way. Welcome back to Unfuck Your Money, the podcast where overwhelmed, high achievers, overgivers, and anxious humans learn how to create a calmer, more empowered relationship with money, themselves, and with life. I'm your host, Nadz, behavioral finance coach and somatic practitioner, founder of Save a Million Cents, where I help people understand the behavior behind their money so they can finally bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. Over the past several years, I've helped clients pay off debt, reduce financial anxiety, understand their financial trauma, build savings, increase income, stop emotional spending, and create more financial stability, not by teaching them how to budget harder, but by helping them understand the emotional, behavioral, and nervous system patterns that drive their financial decisions. Because here's what most financial advice gets wrong. It tells you what to do, but it rarely explains why it's so hard to do it. And that's where this podcast comes in. Here we explore the intersection of money, behavior, nervous system, self-trust, emotional well-being, and the very human reasons we struggle to follow through on what we already know would help. Because when you strip away the spreadsheets, so much of our financial behavior is about emotional regulation, attachment, safety, identity, and habit loops, and not maths. Which is why my clients can recite every personal finance book ever written and still struggle before working with me. So if you're tired of hustle culture, shame-based financial advice, and wondering why doing the right thing with money feels so much harder than it should, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Unfuck Your Money. So, quick question. Do you know why my business is called Save a Million Cents? It's kind of an inside joke about myself. It's because I often find myself trying to replenish my e-fund my emergency fund to get it to my $10,000 saving minimum so my nervous system can relax. And if you do the maths, $10,000 is $1,000,000, hence the name Save a Million Cents. I remember back in 2015 when I reached that 10K milestone for the first time. The first 10K I ever saved up. I was 35 years old and I remember how spending any of that money I worked so hard to save felt so terrifying. I kept feeling like if I were to spend this money, something terrible would happen. I am what you would call a late bloomer when it comes to money and retirement goals, and that's because I'm an immigrant. And if you're an immigrant too, you understand how this can prevent us from building financial wealth in the traditional sense. I had to start from scratch in 2005 when I moved to Australia, and then again in 2009 when I moved to France. And then when that fell apart, I had to start from scratch again in 2011. And that's when I started educating myself on personal finance, even though I've held financial roles professionally long before that. But we all know this by now. Knowing how to manage other people's money is very different to attempting to manage our own. I had to start all over again when I moved to New Orleans in 2016 and again when I started my business in 2020. It was only when I learned about money archetypes and inner child healing in 2021 that I started to better understand why I did what I did with money. This is when I learned that behavioral and psychological sides of money are much more important than spreadsheets and maths. And today I want to talk about something that I see way more often than people realize. People who technically have enough money, or at least enough to create some support, some relief, or some breathing room in their lives, but emotionally they still feel terrified to spend on themselves. And I do not mean reckless spending here. I don't mean luxury handbags and impulsive shopping sprees, even though I myself enjoy shopping sprees or a custom-made ring from the Great Frog London here and there. But what I actually mean is things like spending money on therapy, hiring help or support when they need it to make their life easier. They delay healthcare even though the money is in the bank. They are too scared to take time off. They deny taking vacations even though their bodies are screaming for a break and a change of scenery. They deny themselves in investing in their well-being, and even they don't replace things that are broken. I'm talking about people who have $50,000, $100,000, sometimes even more, who still feel deep panic around using money to actually care for themselves or better their lives. I think this is especially true for high achievers, for immigrants, for overgivers, for people that came from unstable homes, from trauma survivors, caregivers, and people who grew up around chaos or scarcity. In other words, people who had no choice but to become the strong one or the responsible one, the one who does the right thing or the self-sacrificing one, or the one that never asks for help because they have to be perfect and never need anything. As a behavioral finance coach, the most common money management problem is, of course, what you imagine. It's overspending. But no one really talks about the cost of underspending, or as the trauma of money method calls it, money hoarding. Before I go in deeper, I want to state the obvious just for the sake of clarity. I think and I believe that saving money is a good thing. Being financially responsible is a great thing. But feeling scared and going into fight or flight when spending money we have on something we need for our well-being is a problematic habit. It is not as common as overspending. It's not commonly talked about, but it's still something worth talking about. I see so many clients with hundreds of thousands plus in their bank accounts. I'm not talking about their retirement fund, but they're in their day-to-day bank accounts who are too scared to pay for therapy or get a massage or even visit the doctor. And before you even think it, yes, even folks with a high net worth come to me for coaching. At first, it boggled my mind, but with time, I started to see why. Living in financial fear, even when money is available, is a problem when it starts affecting the quality of your life. And it's a problem when all of your decisions are driven by fear. And when that bank account becomes a metric for how you see your worth, your success, or it's a symbol of your safety in this world. Like if you feel like a failure or like you did something wrong or you're bad for using your money, the money that you already have, especially on yourself. So, here are some signs that money hoarding may be becoming a problem. For example, you have significant savings but cannot spend money on basic needs without feeling anxiety. You delay healthcare, you delay therapy, you delay dental work or support despite being able to afford it. You experience guilt every time you spend money on yourself. Your quality of life is suffering while your savings continue to grow. You feel safer watching the account balance increase than actually using the money to improve your life. You actually have a difficult time distinguishing between a genuine emergency and a hypothetical future catastrophe. You keep choosing your own discomfort over spending money on finding solutions. You are someone that prides yourself on needing less and less, even when it comes at a cost to your well-being. I know many friends who are in this category. Your saving accounts becomes your primary source of emotional safety. You might feel panic when your balance decreases. That's like me when I felt panic every time my balance would go under 10K. And you struggle to enjoy experiences because you're preoccupied with what they cost. You postpone your joy indefinitely until quote unquote things feel a little bit more secure. I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes. You have enough money to solve a problem, but you continue to suffer instead. You find it easier to save money than to receive support, and you are preparing for a future that never seems safe enough to arrive. When we have worked our butts off to make money, we are understandably scared of mismanaging it or doing the wrong thing with it, especially when our income is seasonal or fluctuating, or when life has taught us that shit happens and that we can't rely on anyone else but ourselves. Having money in the bank sounds ideal, but it can feel like a real heavy burden, something to constantly worry about. We were worried when we didn't have money, and now we're worried about having it. We're still living in a state of financial fear no matter what our bank account says. Because money hoarding can have hidden costs, my love. It can cause burnout, it can cause stress, even chronic stress. It can cause missed opportunities, like if we're scared of going out or joining a fun class because it costs money. It can cause decision fatigue, relationship conflicts, reduced quality of life, and delayed healing in healthcare. Kind of what we spoke about earlier. But like these are the hidden costs of money hoarding. Having large amounts of cash reserves is wise, it is necessary, and it can feel genuinely protective. But it boils down to this question: is the money serving you, or are you serving the money? In other words, is this money helping you live better, or is it keeping you in survival mode? Because financial wellness is not just about having money, it's about being able to use money in ways that support your well being. Financial wellness looks like freedom from having constant vigilance, freedom from guilt when spending money on ourselves or others, freedom from hyper responsibility, and freedom from catastrophe planning. And honestly, I've seen people deny themselves incredible amounts of support and fun while sitting on large amounts of savings, not because they're stingy, not because they're greedy, but because spending on themselves activates guilt, it activates hypervigilance and fear and collapse. And money becomes emotionally untouchable. Their money is emotionally untouchable. So I'm asking you, is this financial wellness or is this financial self denial? Because I've watched people burn out and stay overwhelmed and deny themselves of so much and continue to suffer unnecessarily while technically they have enough resources in the bank available. That is not a maths problem, that's an emotional safety problem. And when I was thinking about how this particular money issue shows up for me, a few things came to mind. I'm usually scared of spending money when it's for something I really want, but a part of me deems it frivolous. And it usually gets worse when I'm unclear of how and when more money will be coming my way. And it's the worst when it comes to using money for my own well being because somehow, for some reason, I have been conditioned to believe that my needs come last, especially when it's something to do with my well being, because there's a sneaky part of me that says, more, you should have it all together now. We must be perfect. Anyone out there also a parentified child? Because that's me. We've been taught that we have to be perfect and our needs are not a priority. And I think this is where mainstream financial advice completely misses the human experience. One of the hardest things for high functioning people is that the outside world often praises high functioning, perfect behavior. Well, people tell me, oh my God, you're so responsible. Oh my God, you're so disciplined. Oh my God, I wish I could save like you. Meanwhile, internally, I am feeling chronically unsafe. I'm unable to relax. I'm terrified of the future. I'm terrified of spending money. I'm feeling absolutely emotionally deprived and absolutely exhausted. And secretly, I'm judging myself as having quote unquote scarcity or poverty mindset. Personally, I think labeling ourselves as having scarcity mindset is very violent. This is not scarcity mindset. This is a nervous system that is seeking safety. Again, this is not a scarcity mindset, my love. Stop being violent to yourself. This is your nervous system that is seeking safety. Your nervous system it does not work like spreadsheets. You can't force it to cooperate when it's being labeled and judged, especially if you grew up learning that resources can disappear, that support isn't guaranteed, that life can fall apart suddenly, that you must always prepare for a disaster, or that your needs are burdensome or even, dangerous. It may feel like the only thing standing between you and a catastrophe is money. But that's not true. I challenge that because yes, money can feel like it can make you feel emotionally safe. It can definitely make life feel easier. But as a high achiever, look at what you have achieved in your life. I want you to see the truth. If something were to happen, you have the resources and the strength to deal with it. And yes, money is important, but it's not the only thing that is standing between you and something bad. And this is where I think financial wellness, it needs so much more nuance, because if your relationship with money is so fear-based that you cannot access support, pleasure, or relief or care, having money in the bank account does not automatically mean you have financial freedom. And this is why I talk so much about nervous systems and money together, because financial wellness is not about how much money you have or about how much financial literacy or education you know. It's also about, can you experience safety? Can you receive support? Can you care for yourself? Can you trust yourself with money? Can you tolerate spending it without spiraling into fear? Because that matters. That is financial wellness. Now, does this mean spend recklessly to heal your inner child? No. I'm not talking about abandoning discernment or financial responsibility, but we have to ask ourselves, at what point does responsibility becomes self-abandonment? I'm talking about slowly expanding your capacity to believe that you're allowed to use resources to support your life. You're allowed to take space. You're allowed to enjoy your money. It's very different than being reckless. And honestly, for many people, this is deep work, especially when underneath it all, we believe that we can only relax when we are overprepared. This is not a you or me problem. This is what life and past experiences have taught us. But to break this fear pattern, we must eventually have to ask ourselves, is this helping me or is this just helping me survive? That is the vulnerable question. So if this resonates with you, I just want you to know there's nothing shameful about your pattern. You don't have a scarcity mindset. Again, stop being so violent towards yourself. Your nervous system adapted intelligently to your experiences, to what life has presented to us. And healing or letting go of this pattern doesn't mean becoming irresponsible. It means slowly creating enough internal safety that money becomes a tool for supporting your life, not just protecting you from fear. Of course, I'm here if you'd like my support to create a calmer, healthier relationship with money in your nervous system. I really invite you to book a one-on-one financial wellness and somatic coaching session with me through the session in the notes, because I have a lot of experience in breaking this pattern. So for now, before we end, I want to chat some more about breaking this pattern, just so that you have some tools to take with you and start working on this. First things first. Okay, I'm going to recap. You do not have a financial literacy problem. You do not have a math problem. You do not have a budgeting problem. You don't have a lack of money problem if this is your problem. You do not have a scarcity mindset problem. What really is happening underneath the hood is a belief that sounds like, if I spend, I won't survive later. I must always be prepared for catastrophes. My needs are dangerous. If I relax, something bad will happen. Money is protection. Support is risky, and so on and so forth. Okay? The huge mistake in the finance world is when your advisor or coach tells you to just invest in yourself, to just hire help, because this accidentally creates shame and resistance and internal conflict and more freeze in your nervous system. Because underneath the hood of this money hoarding situation is a nervous system that still feels like you're in danger no matter how much money you have. Your body and your nervous system learn to brace when money is available, because that is what life taught you to do. It's not your fault. You're not crazy. You're not faulty. You're not broken. So when you have 100K in your account, but you emotionally only feel safe spending 20 or $200, that's a capacity issue. It's a nervous system capacity issue. So what we do is we borrow from somatic experiencing and we build titration. Titration is built through tiny, tolerable experiments, not through spending recklessly, not ongoing and treating yourself and then collapsing the next day, not to force yourself to spend, instead titration. Small examples of titration. Book one massage. Buy a better mattress. Hire someone for one task. Replace the worn out cushion in your couch. Go to one therapy session. Book one coaching session. Upgrade one thing that improves your daily life. Like, I don't know, upgrade your can opener. Upgrade your the type of coffee that you drink if you're a coffee drinker. Then sit down and process the emotional reaction afterwards. The sitting down and processing the guilt, the fear, the resistance, the relief, that is where we build capacity. So it's not just the tiny experiment, it's also the processing that builds capacity and builds self-trust. These two steps go hand in hand. Okay, when I work with people who have this pattern, we often reveal a part that says, don't spend, something terrible is going to happen. And another part of them that is exhausted, a part that says, oh my God, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep carrying everything. And another part that really wants relief, a part that wants support, care, spaciousness, and wants to enjoy life, but feels guilty to ask for it. So in my sessions, I help people understand their money patterns, identify their protective parts, like the parts we just talked about, and understand why safety feels elusive, even if the money is in their bank account. So if you are someone who built financial security, but still can't relax, you can't enjoy life, you can't replace your can opener, you can't spend money on yourself without feeling guilt, the problem is not your finances. You need to build self-trust. You need to increase capacity to receive support. That's a nervous system issue, and create a healthier relationship with money, because sometimes the problem is not your budget. Sometimes it is, but this specific problem, that's not your budget. That's not how much money you have. It is a part of you that still believes you are one disaster away from losing everything. Because financial wellness isn't just about having money. Having money does not automatically guarantee financial freedom. It's about being able to use money in ways that support your life, because the goal is not to die with the biggest bank account. The goal is to build a life that feels safe enough to actually live and enjoy and be present with your people, be present with in every moment. So if you've done the saving, you've been responsible, you've prepared for every possible emergency, but spending money on yourself still feels terrifying, then please do yourself a favor and book a session with me. But for now, to end this episode, I invite you to ask yourself, what support have you been denying yourself? What would change if money becomes a tool instead of a shield? What problem could you solve this month that you've been enduring for years? Thank you so much for joining me on this very important conversation. Again, if you'd like to book a session with me, I have a few spots available, and you can do that through the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, for joining me on Unfuck Your Money, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning into the Unfuck Your Money podcast. If this episode was helpful, I'd love to send you a free gift. Leave a 5-star review and send a screenshot to @Nadine Zumot on Instagram, or the link in the show notes, and I'll personally send you my financial freedom starter kit as a thank you. This is a powerful step-by-step resource to create epic abundance and safety with your money. Every review helps me reach more high achievers who desire and deserve financial freedom. So click subscribe and download a few more episodes, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.